Alrighty, guys. Well, this was a little bit of a surprise to me. I knew of this movie. I knew that Guillermo del Toro was going to be making a Frankenstein movie. And, I'd seen the picture of Oscar Isaac as Victor Frankenstein, the one who creates Frankenstein's monster. That's the, misconception, the classic misconception of everyone thinks it's Frankenstein is the monster. Although, this movie, based on the trailer, might be playing with that idea a little bit of who is really the monster, the creator or the created. But, everyone thinks that the monster itself is Frankenstein, but Victor Frankenstein is the human being. Anyways, I knew that this movie was coming out. I knew Oscar Isaac was going to be in it and whatnot. But I didn't quite realize that Netflix was going to be the one producing it and all that. So at the Dumb event, I wasn't watching the event live. But afterwards, I went through and I was looking through all the trailers. And I was like, oh, Stranger Things. Of course, I have to talk about Stranger Things and Wake Up Dead Man and Squid Game Season 3. Oh, Frankenstein. Let me check out this trailer and just see what's up. I watched the trailer and I thought, I got to talk about this. This movie looks awesome. And what's so interesting to me is that we've gotten so many adaptations in modern times. Because I know in the in the 20th century, in the 1900s, there were many, many adaptations of Frankenstein and The Bride of Frankenstein and whatnot. And, most of them, I would think, I haven't seen all of them, but I think most of them in recent times are skewing a little less, a little away from the books, right? The book itself, the Mary Shelley book of Frankenstein, and more towards the supernatural. And I mean, it is supernatural, but more towards the, fiction side of it and making things, tangential and subplots. And I think, I could be wrong. It's been a long time since I read the original Frankenstein, but The Bride of Frankenstein was a creation for film, I think. Don't quote me on that. But anyways, I think that these movies also, like with vampires and Dracula, you can tell all these sorts of tangential stories with them and based on the IP and the character. So I watched this trailer and I was thinking, is this just going to be another case of, it's going to be sort of a loose adaptation of the book? And I watched it. Again, it's been, I want to say almost 10 years since I've read the book, but I did remember reading the book. This looks like a very faithful adaptation to me of the book. And I think that that's somehow, in some way, a little refreshing, actually. That somebody, Guillermo del Toro, who is as skilled of a filmmaker as he is with The Shape of Water and Pan's Labyrinth, as they alluded to in the trailer, is taking a stab at what it looks like making a very faithful book adaptation. One of the keys to this that makes me think this is that if you have read the book, you know that the book is sort of a frame story. It's people telling the story within the story, basically. That's what a frame story is, where you have, like, let me tell you the story of. And I think it's from Victor Frankenstein's perspective, although I think the monster has some parts in it where the monster is talking as well. I think. Again, it's been a long time. But the reason that I think that this trailer is alluding towards a more faithful adaptation is that there are parts, I think, from the book where you see Oscar Isaac's Victor Frankenstein. He's like, let me tell you what happened and whatnot. And I think that it's one of those frame stories where Victor Frankenstein is towards the end, right? And he's recounting everything that happened before. And then I think some things happen after his retelling. So I think that based on that, it looks really interesting. And it looks like a more true adaptation of the Mary Shelley book. On top of that, Oscar Isaac looks fantastic in this role. I'm not going to say awards buzz because I haven't even seen the movie, but this looks like a role that he could really sink his teeth into, is what I will say, which I think is a really awesome thing. And then, also, I think that the visual style is really gritty and grounded, and I think that it just feels tangible, right? We're talking about nature here, the idea of nature and creation and whatnot. And the laboratory looks really great. I love the color palette as well, being a little bit more muted in certain places. Speaking of, Wake Up Dead Man, a little bit more gothic in a certain sense. I kind of thought this was going to happen when the monster showed up after the title, and I was like, we're not really going to see his face, are we? Because I think that's what we're most curious about. There's the iconic image of Frankenstein, that from the original movie in the 1900s that everyone is very familiar with, I think. That's sort of the classic Frankenstein of if you dress up as Frankenstein for Halloween, you have the screws, I think, on the side of your head. So I'm very curious to see what this iteration of Frankenstein looks like, because I think that that's something that's kind of important for this character of the look, nailing the look and making it iconic in its own sense. So I'm very interested in that. But I wanted to talk about this trailer because I think that sneakily, all of a sudden, this movie has become, I think, a little bit more anticipated for me. I'm quite excited to see what this iteration of Frankenstein turns into, and I hope you guys are as well. So guys, did you watch the trailer for Oscar Isaac and Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, and what did you think about it? Let me know in the comments down below.